Rumble, show man, rumble. Third term loading, actually fourth term, because we're doing a good job, a very good job. Just like Fayval Williams, who took a pass this ridiculous concept that the PNP call a budget. Yet this is a budget regardless of what Mark Golding said. And it shows that this will cost Jamaica so much that it can literally lead to finsac 2.0, just like what Miss Fayval Williams said and what she has presented when she break it down so Jamaica listen in its entirety and understand the point that Miss Fayval Williams is making to show you that the PNP does not mean Jamaica any good with their budgetary presentation that Mark Golding run from right now. Show.
We're projecting to receive $5.9 billion, call it $6 billion in grants. We will put that on the ledger of the opposition as well. So those are the revenue items, Madam Speaker. On our side, we expect to see revenue and grants of $1 trillion, $96 billion, and $83 million. On the opposition side of the ledger, they have an implied revenue of $965 billion, $443 million, because they don't want any securitization or NHD contribution or other non-recurring revenues. They especially don't like securitization. And they figure, Madam Speaker, if they speak badly against securitization over and over and over and over again, Jamaicans will begin to think it's a bad thing, because after all, the leader of the opposition was a partner in a very big financial sector company, and so he must know a thing or two about securitization. And if he says he doesn't like securitization, then Jamaicans probably would conclude that something is wrong with securitization. But I want to say to Jamaicans, there is nothing wrong with securitization. The global securitized market is massive, nearly US 13 trillion. Research shows that 73% of residential mortgage debt is funded by securitization. 16% of auto loans are funded by securitization. 27% of commercial real estate debt is funded by securitization. 7% of credit card debt is funded by securitization. 8% of student loans are funded by securitization. 40% of multifamily debt is funded by securitization. 1 trillion of corporate borrowing is funded by securitization. The securitization market, while having roots in the late 18th century, with debt securitization, was modernized with the structured financing of mortgage pools in the 1970s, and has grown significantly since then. So, Madam Speaker, I believe the opposition leader can stop now trying to drum all the negatives into the heads of Jamaicans about securitization. In the next chart, we move on to the next line item in the budget, non-tax revenues. These non-tax revenues, Madam Speaker, they include the $11.4 billion from NHT. They include asset sales, any share sales, for example, Trans-Jamaica. This is also where we put distributions from public bodies. And this would be where we have securitizations. They don't like that, so they can't get it. No, Madam Speaker, do you remember how the opposition leader declared that he would stop extracting the 11.4 from NHT, and that securitization is us taking revenues from the future to spend in the present, and something about, and yes. Well, Madam Speaker, we cannot put any revenues from that in their column. Right, nothing. We would offend them if we did. So nothing there, Madam Speaker. So we move on we move on to the next item, the bauxite levy. Madam Speaker, we are projecting to receive $812 million in bauxite levy. And we will put that same amount, bauxite levy, on their side of the ledger as well. I know the opposition loves bauxite levy. They may even want to increase this number in their explicit, not their implied, their explicit budget. Because it was Michael Manley-led government who, after all, took on the transnational bauxite companies and imposed the 1974 bauxite levy. So they have a history with levies. As the history was written, in May 1974, Prime Minister Michael Manley announced that Jamaica would repeal previous agreements with the bauxite companies and impose a production levy on all bauxite either exported from or processed in Jamaica. Madam Speaker, anyone can read the history books about how that turned out. Revere Bauxite Company closed its shutters little more than a year later, on August 19, 1975. Reynolds folded and left Jamaica in 1984. Alcoa also temporarily closed its gates in Clarendon on February 6, 1985. Jamaica did get increased earnings from the bauxite levy, which went from US $19.2 million in 1973 to a whopping US $180 million in 1974. But, Madam Speaker, the levy also moved the cost of Jamaican bauxite from being the cheapest to the most expensive worldwide. In an article entitled "The Bauxite Levy 40 Years On, Who Let the Puss Out of the Bag?" the author quoted Dr. Davis and economist Dennis Morrison as saying that Jamaica has little to show from the bauxite levy, and that the country suffered through ill-fated projects and misspending of the bauxite levy funds, which were lodged to the Capital Development Fund. The upshot of all of this, Madam Speaker, is that bauxite companies began increasing their investments, not in Jamaica, in other bauxite-producing countries,